Osio Nagad, Jennifer Lauren, Dawado. Hello, everyone. I'm Jennifer Lauren, Cherokee Nation citizen and host of Osio Voices of the Cherokee People and Senior Director of Cherokee Film. Welcome to Chalagi, wherever we are. Storytelling has long been an essential element of Cherokee cultural survival. Oral traditions predate Sequoia's invention of the syllabary by millennia. Today, we will be exploring storytelling past, present, and future. In this episode, we will hear from Principal Chief Chuck Hoskin Jr., followed by an OCO TV segment featuring young storyteller Whitney Roach. Next, you will hear two stories from the incomparable Cherokee national treasure, Robert Lewis. Then we will get a peek at the Cherokee language animation called Inagay, followed by the very talented Candace Bird Boney, who will treat us to her original story, starring Sequoia. After that, District 15 Counselor Danny Callison will deliver the Tribal Council's message, and Ryan Mackey will deliver our closing remarks. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Principal Chief Chuck Hoskin Jr. for his remarks.
From time immemorial, Cherokee people have shared stories to pass on our history and our values. Storytelling is a vital aspect of our Cherokee culture, and it continues to be an essential part of our families and communities today. On this broadcast of Cherokee Wherever We Are, we will explore the importance of storytelling in Cherokee traditions, both in historical and modern context. Historically, storytelling was the primary means of sharing knowledge and beliefs from one generation to the next. Stories are used to teach values about our relationship to each other and to the natural world. They can provide guidance on how to live in harmony. In today's modern times, storytelling continues to play a crucial role in Cherokee culture. We've made a concerted effort to preserve traditions and language through storytelling. We all know that language is a central part of Cherokee culture, and the stories are often passed down in the Cherokee language. Our elders, gatekeepers of knowledge and deeply respected in the community, play a critical and important role in storytelling as they help us pass on knowledge and ensure that the next generation better understands Cherokee values like Gadugi, all of us working for the common good. Quality storytelling bridges the gap between generations. As younger people grow up in the modern world, they may not have the same opportunities to learn about our culture as their elders did. Through storytelling, we can better connect with the past and share the values that our ancestors held dear. One critical way we are doing that is enabling stories in film to bloom. We're cultivating a new generation of Cherokee storytellers who can capture and share the Cherokee experience with the world. As we look forward into the future, storytelling will continue to be an essential tool for our people and continue to define who the Cherokee people are. Wado.
Wado, Chief Hoskin and Deputy Chief Warner for joining me over here to talk a little bit more about storytelling in the Cherokee Nation. So recently I was talking with a Cherokee colleague about the power of a story. So Cherokee people have used storytelling as a tool forever, for good, and some people have used it for other reasons. Can you both talk about what you think are some of the most important or powerful uses of storytelling amongst Cherokee people over time?
I think part of it is to perpetuate knowledge of our own history, where we came from, those origin stories, and even parts of our history that you can't find a lot of places. But I think the other really powerful way to use history is to share it with the world. I mean, look, for generations, other people have told our stories, often in good faith and sometimes accurate, sometimes in good faith and inaccurate, and sometimes with bad motives. We just know that, and we have to say it plainly. None of that really inures to the benefit of the Cherokee people in sharing our story with the world. So increasingly, we're sharing our story, and I see that in OCO TV. We do it a great deal on this program, and we do it in our museums, and I just think that's what we have to do. We have to sort of lean into this opportunity we have with the resources we have to tell the Cherokee story for our people and for the rest of the world, so there's an understanding of where we are and where we came from.
Well, and he's exactly right, Chief, that the the power of that story when I start thinking about the little kids, our kiddos that are out there, and all the stories that were told to us, whether they were a traditional Cherokee story or just one that we made up off the cuff, sitting around a campfire.
Right.
You know, there's a lesson in all of that so many times, and I think those are important. Whether you know, and gosh, we have so many good storytellers. And I think back to the times that I've sat and listened to the likes of Sammy Steele and Robert Lewis and other individuals, even at the Miss Cherokee competition. A lot of those young ladies have come up and told some really stories, and there is so much power. And as Chief mentioned too, it's so important to know, and that's sometimes that starts the relationship when you sit down and you hear a story from someone about something, or maybe about them or their family. That is the beginning of building that relationship, which is what Gadugi's all about. You know, is working together and doing things for the greater good. It starts with the relationship with the individual. So that power in that relationship sometimes comes from our innermost stories, and sometimes it comes from those stories where we've learned that valuable life lesson about something that is very treasured, that we should not give away, that we should hold very sacred. So
yeah. So talk to us about some of the different ways that we employ storytelling as Cherokees today, as opposed to maybe how we shared stories, you know, historically, and what purpose this art form serves in today's world.
You know, technology is a big difference, and that's really stating the obvious, but so you can still have someone like Robert Lewis telling a story that dates back 4 generations, but he's doing it in a platform that we can share with the world. I mean, the studio we're in is a really powerful way to do that, and we use the studio for that purpose, among others, getting out in the communities and telling those stories. I think what is important is an understanding that irrespective of the technology, irrespective of how large a tribe we are, spanning the whole United States, or even around the world, these stories are timeless, and I think that that keeps us grounded. But we have different platforms to tell our story today. And we have an opportunity to make sure, you know, Deputy, we talk about this a lot. What opportunities does this generation coming up have? They have an opportunity really to learn about our ancestral stories, our origin stories, and the stories that help, I think, mold us into the Cherokee people that we all want to be, in ways that people in my generation, our generation, didn't have as much of. And I think we have more of that today.
well, you know, when you start exploring your genealogy and you're sitting down and you start listening to that timepiece of during that period, and somebody says, well, during that time, this was what was going on, and or there's an interesting individual that you find in your lineage, and hey, did you know that this person did that? And you know, and our platforms are so big today. OCO TV is one. I mean, I get people coming up to us all the time and say, I love the stories and the pieces and the work that you guys do, because it increases their opportunity to go out there and say, you know what, I want to research this a little bit more. I want to see what more is there to learn about that. And then, you know, the treasure of that is they take that back and they tell their kids or somebody in passing. So we're expanding the story in a right way about where we come from and where we're at today. And more importantly, you can start kind of see with all the technological advances and the different things where we're going. But I think at the root of all of it will always be that simple story that it's just passed from one individual to the other, and watch how that evolves and watch how your kids grow into that. And as you share it with others that maybe from another native tribe or non-natives, I think that's important, because we want to find that understanding. And within our stories is where you will find that understanding that helps us know who each other are, how we would work together, how things were done in the past and today. And you know what, we might find a little bit better way, or we might go back to an old traditional way to do things in the future.
Yeah, but that's absolutely true. The power in the story, you know, it lives on too. Yes. So if you're talking about the future, as you just were, how do you see storytelling continuing to evolve for Cherokee people? And if I may, is there any one form of storytelling that you are most interested in seeing in the future?
I think we're looking at the future of storytelling right now as we see things that Cherokee Nation is doing, Cherokee Nation Film is doing. I mean, we're now living in a time in which Cherokee Nation is producing content to tell stories, whether it's stories from our ancestors or stories about everyday life, personal interest stories of Cherokees doing great things out in the communities. We're living in a time in which the film and TV industry is, I think, to their credit, telling stories involving Native peoples in a more authentic way, a more responsible way. They do that best when they come to an entity like Cherokee Film and learn about how it should be portrayed. That is our culture. So that's the future. And as we start to develop our own expertise in being part of the film and TV industry, we're part of a future industry, really a forever industry. We are forever going to be telling our stories, whether it's contemporary life or historic stories, using the medium, Deputy, that you and I are using right now, that OCO TV uses, the film and TV industry. It's exciting to me because we're a part of this future. So in the future, we're going to see this content. And then the other way we're doing it, I think, increasingly is that we have so many wonderful Cherokee authors. They're out telling stories. It could be children's stories that are adapting some of those stories that we hear Robert Lewis tell, for example. Or it could be, great academic works. It can be fiction works that we have a lot of Cherokee authors that are in, that are authors of really important works. I just think that's the future as well. The key to all this, Deputy, though, is do we have a generation of Cherokees coming up that will take on these challenges? I think we do.
I do too, and I think that the individuals that are out there that are national treasures, that are storytellers, and others that are up and coming. Gosh, I hope they never lose that fire that they have inside. Because if everybody gets the chance to be around the storytellers like Sammy Steele and Robert Lewis and some of the others, they're so animated. And I love that fact that we can utilize technology, but I also like the fact that we can hone the individual's craft in a more traditional way on the stage, sitting around a campfire. How do you do that? Sitting by the stream, and with an elder and listening while you're cleaning wild onions and doing these things, because that's what's happening today, right now in the Cherokee Nation. And so, but we want to embrace technology just like our ancestors did when the printing press was invented. That told a story, a very important story at the time of why we were fighting for what we believed in. And so today, now that understanding, people want to know about, well, what is your culture? What is that? And I think us given the opportunity to take these advancements and to get them out there and tell the story from our side, from our frame of reference, is going to be so important. But I'd never want to lose the stage, if you will. I've been watching a lot of different things, and so many people that are in the movies today, when you watch where did they come from type episodes on TV, interviews or whatever, they light up when they go back to where they started. Mm-hmm. So I want people to be able to understand. I want them to start at the streams, at the campfire, at the community level, sitting in those settings, and to grow from there.
So speaking of technology, this is my final question. Technology is advancing so quickly, and the opportunities for new types of storytelling will continue to present themselves. I'm thinking of AI. You're able to basically tell a computer what photograph you want to see, and it creates it. And, it's moving that direction as far as being able to tell stories with images and moving images in the movies. So what do you think should be the Cherokee Nation's approach as that technology continues to evolve? Do we jump on board with these emerging technologies or stick with what we know, and what's your perspective on all of that?
I think we have to jump on board. I think that's the direction the world is moving. And if we think that Cherokee stories are worth remembering, worth celebrating, worth telling, we have to tell them in the medium and the platforms that people are using, that are accessible. If we had been frozen in place, and I like that you took us back to the printing press, where we were diving into the latest technology, the way people spoke to the world. Cherokees have always been brave in that regard. Why stop? Why not take the same approach that our ancestors took when they needed to speak to the world? Why not take that same approach now? We've got emerging technologies. We've got great experts in the Cherokee Nation. Again, we are in a studio that is part of that technological revolution, and we are here, and it's a Cherokee asset. We need to find that next technology and be a part of it, I think.
Well, I agree, Chief. And like you said, I mean, we have to embrace that, but also too, we can protect. As we embrace that, we get to protect the authenticity of those stories to make sure that it is told in a dignified and a respectful manner, to make sure that we protect the individuals that were a part of that story. Even as names and different things get changed when productions come about, we still have an obligation to the individuals that make up those stories and to the individuals that hear those stories, because we know with today's technology and with the algorithms and the different things, that how certain things can be pushed, and they can push people to the brink of not really finding that understanding. And we want to be able to chart that path along with people. So I do think it's important that we're out on the forefront of what's coming in new, so that not only can we expand our opportunities, but also can we protect what is very valuable and very sacred, just like the whistle once was to the turtle. So.
You wove in a story there.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Is there anything you all would like to add?
I think you've covered it nicely. This is a show that I think people can all relate to. Everyone loves Cherokee stories. I'm so glad we're doing this.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jen.
Yeah, no, thank you, Jen. It's always a pleasure and an honor to be here.
Wado for sharing. We'll see you next time. Up next, let's check in with OCO TV and the multifaceted Whitney Roach, who is not only an up-and-coming storyteller, but also a former Miss Cherokee and a 2022 Remember the Removal bike rider.
A lot of our stories are examples of why animals look the way they do today. And growing up as a little kid, I just think that was the coolest thing. Growing up, I've realized that telling those stories really is helping our culture survive and making it thrive even more so. I really enjoy sharing Cherokee stories with people that don't get to hear it all the time like I did growing up. One of my favorite stories was the story of our first fire. CO. Long ago, before man and when animals could talk, there was no fire. With a harsh winter approaching, the animals got together and they prayed to Unethlana. They said, "Unethlana, please send us something to keep us warm this winter." Unethlana heard their prayers, and he decided to send a storm to a neighboring island across the water. A lightning bolt crashed down, hit a tree, and lit it on fire. All of the animals saw this, and they knew that Unethlana, our creator, had sent them a piece of the sun. The animals got together, and they decided that they were going to send the biggest and the strongest of all the animals. They decided that they were going to send Yona, our bear. Yona said, "I am the biggest and the strongest of all the animals. I will bring back the fire." As Yona swam and swam over to the other island, he soon realized he was too big to make it all the way. All the animals got back together again and decided they were going to send the owl. As the owl flew over to the other island, he perched on top of a tree and looked down at the fire. He soon realized he sat too close to the fire, and it began to burn his feathers and his eyes. He flew back to the island, and to this day, he still has burn spots on his feathers, and his eyes are glowing orange because of the heat of the fire. The animals then decided that they were going to send the raven with its long white feathers. As the raven flew over to the fire, he came down, grabbed some fire with his claws, but soon realized it was too hot to hold on to. He dropped the fire and flew away, but as he was flying away, the ash and the smoke landed on top of his feathers. His feathers are still black to this day. With all the animals starting to lose hope, they decided that they were going to send another animal, but they didn't know who, until one little voice in the back of the group decided to step up. The little water spider said, "Please, let me go try and get the fire." All the animals looked at the little water spider and said, "Water spider, you're too small to go get the fire. There's no way you'll be able to get it." The water spider said, "You can still let me try." The water spider swam over to the island, looked around, and didn't want to get burnt. He saw a small ember pop off from the fire, grabbed some mud from the island, made it into a small clay pot, and scooped the ember and placed it on his back. He swam over to the other island, presented the ember to the animals, and started to blow and blow on the ember. And as he blew and blew on the ember, it started to glow and glow brighter and brighter. He started to put twigs and sticks on top of the ember, and soon enough, we had a fire. The animals began to grab sticks and twigs, and they also placed them on the fire, and it grew bigger and bigger. And that is where we have our fire today. The moral of the story is that we should never look down on someone that is smaller than us, because even the smallest people can still do the greatest things for our people. Well done.
Okay, who out there has never heard of Cherokee National Treasure Robert Lewis? As I expected, I don't see any hands up. I'll just say that the omnipresent Mr. Lewis is the most prolific Cherokee storyteller in modern times, whether at schools and adult care facilities on the reservation or sharing during at-large events. Robert is a selfless and amazing ambassador. He's sharing a couple of stories with us today, which also demonstrates how vital this medium has been to pass down our values and our traditions.
Long ago, all of the animals would talk to us and tell us stories, tell us why things are the way they are. Some animals were tall, some were strong, some were fierce, some were timid, just like people you may know today. This is one of our older stories. At one time, Flint was as tall as a mountain, and Flint was huge, made of rock. The warriors loved Flint because they would go to Flint and say, "We would need some flint from you. We need this rock because we need to make arrowheads and spear points to feed our families. In exchange, we would feed you." Flint loved a good meal, as most Cherokees, and so Flint would take pieces of himself and chip it off and hand it to the warriors. The warriors were grateful, were able to make weapons, spear points. And as they would walk around, using their weapons to hunt the animals all had their own councils, and they would gather. They would say, "Flint is giving too much of himself. Flint is sending out all these pieces of himself to all these warriors, and before too long, they're hunting us and they're taking us down." So all the animals gathered inside a huge council house. Bear was sitting there and said, "We need to get rid of Flint. Who wants to go get rid of Flint?" Everybody was looking at each other because Flint, again, as I said earlier, was as tall and huge as a mountain. Nobody wanted to face Flint. Finally, Wolf said, "I will go. I will face Flint." And all the animals cheered as Wolf went outside the council house. Wolf went to take on Flint. But as Wolf approached Flint, who was huge and tall as a mountain, Wolf became afraid and came back and said, "Flint is too large for me. Flint will take me down." Deer says, "I will go next. I have my antlers. I will take on Flint." But the same thing happened. Deer came back. A few hours later says, "Flint is too vicious and too tall. We cannot get rid of Flint." Rabbit is our trickster and mischief maker. Rabbit stood up and says, "I will get rid of Flint." Everybody turned and looked at Rabbit and says, "You're small and you're tiny. We have Wolf, who's fierce, Deer, who's strong, Bear, who's mighty. None of them will go after Flint." Rabbit says, "I have a plan." And everybody knew that Rabbit was a trickster. So they said, "Okay, tell us this plan." Rabbit says, "No, my plan will only work if I do it. But first, I need everybody to cook their best meal and bring it to my house." All of the animals looked at Rabbit and says, "We think you're just trying to get a free meal out of this." Rabbit says, "No, Flint loves to eat, loves a good meal. I'm going to bargain with Flint. I have a plan." Rabbit gets Beaver aside and says, "I need you to make a steak, a large one, sharp, and a big hammer. Bring it to my house, too." The next day, all the animals bring their best food, and they all set it down in pots and baskets around Rabbit. Rabbit gathers it around his house and begins to stir some food, mixing some and warming it up. Beaver shows up with a big, huge hammer, lays it down in a nice, long steak, says, "Here you go, Rabbit. I didn't bring you any food." Rabbit says, "That's fine. I can use those." All the other animals look at Rabbit and says, "Well, what's your plan?" Rabbit says, "Wait. I've got to get the food ready. Y'all go and hide. Flint's going to be suspicious if he sees all of you here." So all the animals grumble off and they leave, thinking, Rabbit's got a trick up his sleeve. Rabbit's just going to eat our food, and they leave. Rabbit goes up to the mountain to go find Flint. Flint is sleeping. And Rabbit says, "Flint, come on outside. I want to talk to you." Flint comes out of the mountain and looks and sees Rabbit and says, "What do you want? I was expecting a warrior, not a little bunny rabbit. What do you want?" Rabbit says, "Flint, come down. I want to talk to you." Flint bends down low and says, "What do you want?" "I want to bring some food to you. I hear that you used your pieces of yourself to hunt us. I want to offer you some food, just so you will leave my people alone." Flint says, "Well, I haven't had a good meal in a while. The warrior's supposed to come by later and feed me, but I'll come see what you've got." So Rabbit coaxes Flint all the way down to his house. Has all these baskets and pots full of food, and Flint looks at it and says, "Oh, that smells good." Rabbit says, "Take some, eat it." Flint begins to eat as much as he can. Rabbit keeps pushing more food to Flint. And finally, like anybody who eats a big meal, before too long they get sleepy. And Flint says, I think I've eaten way too much. It's all so good, Rabbit. I'm going to go home, but I'm so sleepy. Oh. Rabbit says, why don't you take a nap right here? Just sleep right here. I'll make a nice pillow for you. So Flint lays down, cuddles himself up, goes to sleep. Rabbit waits until Flint's sleeping and says, Flint, Flint. Rabbit grabs that big old stake, that big hammer, puts it right on where Flint's heart is, takes that hammer, smashes as hard as he can. Flint's eyes pop open. Rabbit hits again, and the spear goes in deeper into his chest. Rabbit looks at Flint. Flint looks at Rabbit, and Rabbit jumps off and begins to run. Rabbit gets up, sees Flint staring at him. Rabbit's running as fast as he can. Flint looks at him and begins, this isn't going to hurt me, it's going to hurt you more than it does me, and then begins to laugh. Ha 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 ha. All the animals can hear Flint laughing, and they glance up into the sky and see Rabbit running towards them saying, run, run! They're like, what did you do? Run, run! Rabbit runs past them. They all scatter. They all begin to hide. Then they hear Flint laugh louder. Ha! An explosion happened. The warriors looked up in the sky, and it began to grow dark. Before too long, they could hear things hitting the ground. Pieces of Flint were scattering everywhere, landing and hitting. Everybody began to run. All the animals hid. After about an hour of all this coming back down of Flint being scattered all over the country, Rabbit began to peek his head back out and think, I think I got rid of Flint. When he stuck his head out, he began to hear a whistling sound, looked up, and the last piece of Flint came spiraling out of the sky, laughing, ha ha ha, and split Rabbit's nose all the way to his lip. And Flint's last voice that Rabbit heard was says, I've marked you now, Rabbit. But don't worry. It'll be harder for the warriors to find you and hunt you now, because now they got to find me all around the country, which is why you find Flint scattered everywhere around the country. But no. Long ago, when all the animals would gather and talk to us and tell us stories, they would share them from their council houses. They would talk about how one animal was tall, one was strong, one was swift, one loved to swim, one would sleep all day, just like people. You not know somebody who likes to sleep all day. This is a story for our young people. At one time, there was a young warrior out walking through the woods, and he was hunting. As he was going out hunting, he saw something on the ground move, and he stopped. It was one of the oldest and largest rattlesnakes he'd ever seen. He began to bypass the rattlesnake when the rattlesnake says, young warrior, I need your help. I'm dying. I want to go to the highest mountain. I want to see the sunset one last time. Can you take me up to see the sunset one last time? The warrior looked at the rattlesnake and says, no, you're an old rattlesnake. I don't trust you. The old rattlesnake says, I will not harm you. Take me up to see the sunset one last time. It's my last wish. The young warrior looks at the old rattlesnake and says, okay, I will take you up there one last time. You promise not to bite me. The old rattlesnake says, I will not harm you. And so the young warrior picks up the old rattlesnake, starts to walk. He says, I need to go by my home and tell my family where I'm going so they'll not expect me later on. When they get into the village, everybody sees him carrying this old rattlesnake, and they begin to move back. His family comes forward, his wife and his children, along with his mother and father. The mother and father say, son, why are you carrying that rattlesnake? The young warrior says, he wants to go see the sunset one last time. I promised to take him up there. His wife says, don't do this. Put it down. The children are afraid, and they're gathered around their mother saying, why does father have a rattlesnake wrapped around him? The father looks at him and says, don't worry. I'm strong. I'm young. I'll take him up there. I'll leave him up on top of the mountain. I'll be back. The whole village starts to talk to the warrior, saying, don't take him. Leave that old rattlesnake alone. Put it down. But the more they talk, the more stubborn he becomes, says, I can do this. Don't worry about me. So he takes the old rattlesnake and leaves. They spend a few hours walking up to the mountain. You can see the sun beginning to set. The rattlesnake says, you need to hurry. I won't last much longer. I need to see the sunset one last time. So they get all the way up to the top of the mountain. The old warrior holds up the rattlesnake and says, look at the sunset. Rattlesnake turns and looks at the sunset. It's beginning to cast its last shadows. The rattlesnake says, "Thank you," then turns and bites him right in his chest. The young warrior drops the rattlesnake and lays down. He can feel the poison going into his heart and says, "Why did you do that? You promised you would not harm me." The old dying rattlesnake turns and looks at the young warrior and says, "You knew what I was when you picked me up." We tell these stories to our young children to remind them there are dangers out there in the world now, dangers far more serious than a rattlesnake. And you know what they are. They can harm you, devastate your family. People tell you, don't pick that thing up. Don't use that. It'll be hurtful for you and for your family. And that's the moral behind the rattlesnake and the young warrior. Wado.
Wado, Robert, I always enjoy hearing your stories. I'm sure everyone out there does too. Up next, Inagei, the first animated series developed by the Cherokee Nation, is a way to pique the interest of young people to learn and speak our language. We are not able to play an entire episode today, but here's a quick snippet that should whet your appetite.
Ega agi softone.
Ayada squirrel.
Ayada squirrel. Saya wa dulia. Ama used to now di wanesti.
Juna stetla ega junika histi. Dohi you osta you dead on estotti. Kali do get you so in ni goda. Elis the da ni god dead on elota.
Saya want dai.
Katlita udela hoisti osta kasliha. Eliu idedan eloti. Ega uwosti. Sinuya janawu idodi kahaga.
Naski anehya tahi adiska curly. Sano osi yigi dinesh doti.
Kato ho igalsta. To you junsti ale aya idegwa. Idodi kahaga. Hidi gei.
Dohi you junsti. Ase no elu yiginak tana na curly digala doti ujeli.
Wa, ikan iko ha. Sako husiki. Ase na kato yinadaga yininagi.
Ani asanu danti.
Gado ha nihi jadon tesla dai.
Ani nihi jasa ni jadanti. Ase ni jadanta.
Ani to you jasa naski na wiga jeloisti. Ase nihi nijadanti.
Ha hawa yiniga daga. Ase no aya gohida dejini do hesti. Kato da Nelly.
Ika, tini anuli, ale unata de listi.
Ostage hesti, ase didi niti, asku ikai.
Ika unala says Curly.
Ika da, janula sa, tano, tagi. Udini niya.
Please be sure to follow Cherokee Nation on social media for future updates on where to watch Inagei and other developments. Candace Bird Boney is a scholar, a historian, an artist, and an amazing storyteller who brings a background in acting to her craft. Today, Candace shares with us her original work titled Sequoia and the Invention of the Syllabary.
Most accounts agree that I started my work on the Cherokee syllabary in 1809 or 1810. Some say I was inspired by a newspaper that blew across my path. Others say when I was fighting in the War of 1812, I was intrigued by the letters the English soldiers would send to one another. They communicated their thoughts through written word and sent them to each other across long distances. And I thought, a man invented this writing system, didn't he? Why can't I do the same for the Cherokee language, for the Cherokee people? Accounts say I would spend hours drawing in the dirt, on pieces of bark, creating my own writing utensils with my knife and trying out different symbols for every sound in the Cherokee language. A, E, O, U, One account says that I was inspired by the way the worms crawled in the dirt and the birds flying in the sky. To come up with these letters, these characters, these glyphs that would create the Cherokee syllabary. Not everyone understood what I was doing, though. Many people said I was wasting my time. I was being foolish, or worse, that I was practicing witchcraft. I ignored them all because I knew there was something to this writing system. Committing thought to written word would be like catching a wild animal and taming it. One of the people who believed in my work was my daughter, Ahioka. Tradition says Ahioka was one of my first students. I taught her the symbols, and soon we could communicate with each other through the written word. But the whispers of witchcraft grew into shouts. We were called upon to prove that what we were doing was not witchcraft. So, Ahioka and I, using the writing system, wrote notes to one another. Together, we proved that what we were doing was not witchcraft, and that this way of communication wasn't just for me and Ahioka. This syllabary was for all Cherokee people, anyone who wanted to read and write Cherokee. Gradually, the fear disappeared. Curiosity took its place. Our Cherokee people became hungry for writing in their own language. Many communities began using this writing system. In 1821, the Cherokee syllabary was finished. And then in 1825, the Cherokee Council formally adopted the syllabary as the official writing system for the Cherokee language. Today, we have our own newspapers, an immersion school, and many Cherokee language programs using the Cherokee syllabary. The Cherokee syllabary is ensuring Cherokee thought will endure for generations to come.
Wado, Candace, for sharing your wonderful work with us today. That was really fun to watch. District 15 Counselor Danny Callison, widely known as Coach, is also a retired science teacher. He joins us now to deliver today's Tribal Council thoughts on storytelling.
CO, I'm Danny Callison, and I represent District 15 on the Council of the Cherokee Nation. It's my privilege to join you here today about this entertaining and informative topic. In my professional career as a longtime public educator and coach, teaching and motivating young people was often most successful through stories. It's something that has held true for generations. Storytelling is simply an essential part of our collective humanity, and Cherokees have been using this art form for centuries to convey knowledge, beliefs, and values from one generation to the next. Today on this broadcast, we heard modern storytellers share an array of tales that teach us invaluable lessons through folktale and legend. By studying and sharing these stories, we can improve our understanding of the world around us. They are fun and they are life lessons. They will always remain part of our vast oral history as Cherokees. The most important thing to me about a good story or storyteller is how they bridge across so many different communities, families, and generations. We have a wide breadth of storytelling mediums available to us these days, like books, films, TV shows, podcasts, and social media. And as Cherokees, we will always respect storytelling traditions because they ensure our tribal culture continues, that enriches and inspires the lives of our people for many more generations to come. Wado.
Ocean, Wijo Lega, Wade Galis Gale Dawadon, Telegihi Ayetli, Chalakawani Histiani Wisask, Dagilawstane. Storytelling is probably the most important cultural element that ties Cherokees to our history, as well as our oral traditions, giving us first-hand knowledge of our elders and ancestors' values, behaviors, and beliefs. Storytelling in the Cherokee language is a step above using English, as it uses the original thought patterns of our ancestors to express the ideas that seem to be coded into what it means to be Cherokee. Cherokee storytelling was our earliest form of history. It was our library. It was also our entertainment. It provided all that media does now, TV, radio, internet, all of it. But more than that, it encoded our values and certain spiritual practices and beliefs into the way that we looked at the world. It gave us an opportunity to express ourselves in an artistic way, which allowed us to build our abstract thinking abilities and maximize the traditional oratory skills we needed for traditional leadership. When I was a young person, my grandmother on my dad's side used to tell me stories to help me fall asleep at night. My grandpa on my mom's side used to tell me stories in the cellar in tornado season, scary stories sometimes. Some of our stories are at the heightened level of religious mythology found in sacred texts of all the world's religions. A myth not being something that is untrue, but a story that is tied to the foundational truth of spiritual beliefs and practices. You could say the narratives for the religion of our ancestors are tied together in traditional mythological stories. These stories illustrated the original beings of our planet, the original rabbit, the original bear, the original eagle, and the original human. They gave voice to the sun, the moon, the stars, and made us a part of our creation, and made creation a part of our everyday lives. Certain times of the year were more valuable for certain stories, but some stories were told year-round. And we don't want to overlook the anecdotal stories of our families and our communities, their everyday lives and experiences. Stories were often used to correct by giving life to narratives that demonstrate both what to do and what should be avoided. Sometimes these stories were even more grand than the more famous sacred stories. Maybe even more important to certain individuals, families, and communities, and some of the sacred beliefs that were tied to our cosmology. What your great-uncle did, what your grandma used to do, what so-and-so did last week, sometimes could be seen as just as valuable or just as foundational to our lives as any sacred story that we may have heard, especially if you learn well from the experiences of others. These stories, they taught us lessons. They gave us an understanding of our world. That was their purpose. They've always done that, and they still do. Wadon, Ijayali Elitis.
A nation of adventure.
One nation.
Endless adventure.
Dodagaha e the god and the Yawaya Adejalagi.